Hello, this is Alexandra Lewandowska. Look before you leap into the deep. Søren Kierkegaard once said that life can only be understood backwards, but it has to be lived forwards. Now, what we often do is we try to understand it forwards and then we live backwards. Think of your own life. How many times have you been in a situation when you thought, I've got a feeling my life is about to change. It can't be a coincidence. I met that person on purpose. And you start connecting the dots in the future. And the future is completely different. Life has moved to another room, but you stay stuck there thinking, but I'm connecting the dots here. My plan was perfect. Where is everybody? Your expectations are not met. You are disappointed, so what do? A typical response, fine, I don't need anybody. It's the last time I was so stupid to allow myself to hope. I'm going back to my little shell. Do not disturb. Now, instead of realizing that you've just failed to interpret, to understand life forwards, which we all do all the time, you decide to live backwards in the world of the past, in the world of might have beens, in the world of past hurt. You retreat into yourself, but not for healthy reasons, to pray, to get some perspective, but to escape from the world. Now, why is this approach so dangerous? In time, you might be so used to the comforts offered by your mind, by your daydreaming, your imagination, or whatever else you do to self-soothe in isolation, that you might be less and less willing to actually get out into the world and start living forwards. Now, I know it's tempting to self-isolate, to retreat into yourself when you get hurt, to isolate yourself from the world. But the thing is, just because some of your expectations have not been met, it doesn't mean that the deepest desires of your heart never will. When life gives you lemons, it doesn't mean it's the only fruit you will ever eat. Maybe you get apples tomorrow, but you have a higher chance of actually getting them if you go out to the market instead of staying at home, if you move in the right direction. Now let's read the Gospel and then I'll tell you the direction for our next meditation. Luke 24, verses 13 to 35. Now that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see." He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he were going further. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together, and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. Now what do we have here? Two disciples moving from Jerusalem to Emmaus, from the center of life, from the community, to the little village, little house, little life. On their way they meet God, and as a result they start moving again in the right direction. So back to Jerusalem, back to community, back to life. What they learned on the way and what we might learn from them is, number one, if you are not walking with God, or you think you are not, he is still walking with you. You might not feel it at the moment, but when you look back, you will be able to connect the dots, just like the disciples, but this time they got it right, because they connected the dots looking backwards, not forwards. Number two, if you think that in order to have a relationship with God, you need to meet his expectations, look at these two. They actually told God that he didn't meet their expectations. And the result? They had supper together at their place. Honesty is the way to closeness. Honesty invites God to your home. And number three, God can be found in the Holy Communion, and he sends us out to build community, to build communion in community. So no matter how many times you've been disappointed in people, keep coming back. Keep building the community because you are needed there. You have a role to play and nobody can take your place. So stop hiding in your little village, alright? If you'd like to meditate on this, join me tomorrow at 10 p.m. Central European Time. Bye bye.